They're yours. Hit that one more time. I am the number one determinant of the success or failure. Here we go. Of my students. Hey, y'all, you have a strong summer. Kick some butt next year. Thank you. Appreciate you. That's the mindset. That's the attitude. Love you guys.
And we are live. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Come on in here. We are ready for week 104. Let's see who we got in here. We got Ricardo Giannis in the building, Janine Wilkins, Rodney Williams, Takesha High. Let me know where you're coming from, folks, too. I just like to know what parts of the world are checking in. We got D. Walker and Principal Dot McKeever Jeter in the building. We got my man Michael Benton in the building, Laura Mayer, Tiffany Curry, Tommy Vincent Hilliard, Albert Buckles, all the way from Dallas, bringing that fire today. We got Raquel Squall, good to see you. Cynthia Farmer, Julia Rich in the building, good to see you, Principal Rich. We got Tony McClenny. We got Dahara Nadaye. I know I'm messing that up. You guys send me them phonetics at some point. John Herricks, Lily Lanier, Hortensia Hernandez, the queen, my wife, Kimberly Broughton Kafele is in the building. Vanessa Deskin, Corrine, Paul, PhD, Yolanda McKinney, 104 Power, holding it down. Darlene Pettit is in the building. My man, Principal Otis Kitchen II is in the building. Lysandra Brackens, Stacy Mabry, Principal Stacy Mabry. She's going to be one of our guests coming up soon. We got Melissa Jones Chunu. We got Ruhi Ahmed out here in Jersey and Willingboro. That's down south. Hey, Ruhi, you know, people from North Jersey, we don't even make it down South Jersey. It's like y'all in a different world, a different state, right? Fatima Johnson Avery's in the building down there in Maryland. I'm going to be in Maryland this week, down there speaking somewhere. Jean Lee is in the building. Bev Hill is in the building. Rochelle Brown, TJ Lee. Let's see where we at. John Few, Hector, and Cesar. Man, I know I messed that up. Gomez, Argate, Siobhan Jackson, Principal Jackson's in the building. Principal Tammy Taylor is in the building. Oh, man, look at that compliment you gave me, the Godfather. When I think of that word Godfather, it takes me back, Tammy, to James Brown, because you know I'm all James Brown. I'm all JB. I'm unapologetic. James Brown is my guy. Right? There is no Michael without James. There is no Prince without James. Right? So anytime I hear that word Godfather, it just takes me back to the Godfather of soul, the Mr. Dynamite, the amazing Mr. Please himself, the hardest working man in show business, the star of the show, James Brown. See, I even got the intro, man. we got Demario Strickland, Erlinda Cologne. We got Lewis Saunders, my man, in the building. Shannon Stevens Davis in the building. My man Rom Crespo's in the building. Lakeisha Mabry is in the building. Kimberly Strant Davis is here. Darnell McElveen is in the building. My man Rashard Davis out there in Vegas holding it down is in the building. What else we got? Angelise Taranjo Rosales is in the building. Will Freddie Garcia is in the building. Oh man, we got so many people, but you know, I was getting ready to go to my intro, but then I see the other Godfather, Dr. Aniel Austin is in the building. He's the how's that title go? The assistant chancellor, vice chancellor of Education in New York State is in the building. We all going to be together. You know I'm going to talk about the program too, Doc. So that's coming up. Taryn Lee is in the building. My man, that's the last one. Josh Tovar, MPA Jaguars. Principal Josh Tovar is in the building. Hey, y'all, it's 11 o'clock. In fact, it's 11:01. It's time to get started. Hit the share button. Hit the retweet button. Let me say formally to everybody, good morning. Greetings. Welcome to week 104 of the virtual AP Leadership Academy. And I don't know about you. I say it all the time. I think I know. I mean, you checked in, but I can only speak definitively for me. So I don't know about you, but I think I know. But I want to share with you. I just need you to know before we get started how I feel this morning. I'm on fire. That's how I'm feeling, y'all. I got to tell you that all the time, right? Because you chose leadership. And I'm using myself as an example with this big, huge KC on my shirt. I got to let you know that despite the world, the challenges, the obstacles, the pressures, the demands, the stuff of the world, I'm still on fire. Woo! Woo! See, that's my release every Saturday. I told y'all that last Saturday. I tell you that every Saturday. That's like me letting out 7 days. I don't do that during the week. I don't do that any other time. Just on Saturday morning, I let it go, man. And I'm gonna say to one of y'all, because once I do that, it's like relief. I feel like doing it again. Matter of fact, I am. Woo! Woo! It's like I probably woke up my whole block, but that's all right. It's like a release, man. 7 days. You know, I'm not doing what you do, but I'm doing what I do. And you got to let that out. So you figure out your way. It's like an exhale. It's just a loud exhale, but you figure out what you got to do to bring you down. Because you might be up here when you don't need to be up here. You know, and I ain't talking about 420. Right? I'm talking about a different kind of high, right? You might be up here and you need to be down here. Right? Somebody said, what do you mean by 420? You Google that one, right? So now let me give you my quick motivational message real quick. I got a superstar is waiting in the wings. So let me give you this real quick. I'm saying here with my quick motivational message, be sure to be in the driver's seat of your life. Once again, be sure to remain in the driver's seat of your life. With a sub question, are you a passenger of your own life? Imagine you a passenger of your life. You sitting in the back seat while somebody's driving your life. Think about that for a minute. You got to, like I said, you got to bring things down, but I didn't say relinquish that steering wheel, right? You got to hold that steering wheel. If you're on the plane, you got to hold them controls. You can't say, hey, you take the wheel. I'm going to sit in the back and let you drive my life. No, you got to be in charge. You got to be in control. So let's transfer that now to your work. So you in the school, you assistant principal, principal's watching you principal, superintendent's watching you commissioners, you watching you commissioner. But you're not in control. So the job is controlling you. Right? So your leadership is controlling you. You can't even relax. You can't even watch your favorite show. You can't even hang out with your significant other. You can't even hang out with your children or your friends because the job has got you. Right? So I'm saying to you, you're not in control because the job has got you by the throat. And I'm putting emphasis on that because I know I'm talking to somebody out there right now. I know you on here right now, and you know what I'm talking about. The job has got you by the throat, and it's got you in this tight grip, and you can't do other things that will keep you balanced because you so job conscious. Job. You can't think of nothing else. I'm saying to you, extricate yourself from the clutches of the job, because you have to be in the driver's seat of your life. Do you hear me? So with that said, again, that sub question, or are you a passenger of your own life with someone else driving? That's my quick message for you this morning, my motivational message. Again, if there's somebody out there and the job has got you by the throat, I hope you heard me, man. I hope you heard me. Let's go. To the first timers, I always got to say this, because a lot of time the first timers are people who heard me in person, and they like, man, you a little different from. If I came in there with this much fire in person, like in somebody's library, cafeteria, auditorium, they probably like throw me out, right? Like, yo, what you doing? we don't know you like that, right? So like, I bring it down. Except like if I'm doing a keynote, that's different. Then I might have more fire than I got right now, right? But outside of that, you know, I'm like mellow. They say you kind of mellow. Like, you're not like that on Saturday. I said, no, that's Saturday stuff. Cause see, when you out there on location, the people are forced to hear you. That's the bottom line. Superintendent said, or the principal said, we're going to listen to Kafele today. But when you check in on a Saturday, you're not forced to be here. You chose to be here. So because of that, I bring the fire. See, it's just a different thing, right? So let me keep going. School Leadership Institute. You know, I take the virtual AP Leadership Academy on the road, so we're in person, but I call it School Leadership Institute. July 12th, July 13th. Google School Leadership Institute with Principal Kafele. Register on that site, and then join me in Charlotte, July 12 and 13. We're going to be in person for 2 days. Same room, us, right? So just register there. The Deaf Ed Conference, July 16 and 17 in Atlanta. Go to my Facebook page, my personal page, Principal Kafele. You'll see the flyer. Come join me in Atlanta, July 16 and 17. My Brother's Keeper. Oh, man. That's the annual symposium coming up this Thursday and Friday. Myself, my guest that's on today, Anibal Soler, he's going to be one of the presenters. We'll be on together on April 28 and 29. So I put the link on my page this morning. Just go to my personal page, Principal Kafele. Register is free, and then join us virtually this Thursday and Friday. Where we at? My personal Facebook page. I was telling y'all that I'm gonna phase that out. I changed my mind, right? So we're gonna keep this platform on Principal Kafele, Virtual AP Leadership Academy on Facebook, YouTube, Virtual AP Leadership Academy, and Twitter, Principal Kafele. So I'm not gonna phase it out after all. We're gonna keep it intact because I think I was confusing people. Congrats to all the folks who landed positions. And congrats to folks who are preparing for positions, right? So those of you who are interviewing, congrats. Those of you who got the job, congrats. Put it in the thread. We'd like to see who you are. Put it right in the thread. If you just recently got hired as a new AP, as a new principal, we want to clap you up and give you some fire. So make sure you do that real quick, because I'm getting ready to bring up my guests. You know, I always got to show y'all the newest joints. The Equity and Social Justice Education 50. That's the newest one. It's red hot still, y'all, man. This thing is blazing, man. So if you don't have a copy, get yourself a copy. The Assistant Principal 50. This is even blazing more than this. So if you don't have a copy, get yourself a copy. And then the Aspiring Principal 50. This is for those who want to be administrators or those who want to be principals. The other ones, they sitting here on the shelf, but we ain't gonna spend all that time promoting all them books. But those are the three. Amazon, just go right there. If you happen to stop by Barnes & Noble, They sell them online. But if you happen to stop by Barnes and Noble and notice they're not on the shelf, just say to them, how come y'all don't sell Principal Kafele stuff in the store? Right? Just say it to them, see what they say. Because I got my own reasoning, but I'm not going to share that this morning. I'm rocking a Jackie Robinson Negro League Kansas City Monarchs. This is his jersey, right? Number 5 on the back. This is what he wore in the Negro Leagues in 1945, the only year he played in the Negro Leagues. So I got to drop that history on you so you know what I'm wearing. I don't just want you to see he's got on a shirt that says KC. I want you to know what the significance of the jersey is. So in 45, he played for the Kansas City Monarchs. 46, he played for the Montreal Royals, the minor league team to the Dodgers. And then in 47, the Brooklyn Dodgers. So we want you to know that progression. And then finally, I'm here. So I got a guest today. Man, I got a big-time guest, man. I got a big-time guest. I'm getting ready to bring him up here. I got my man. I've been knowing, I don't know when we met. I think it's like 12 years ago, but I got my man, Superintendent Anibal Solaire Jr. in the building, in the house, on the platform at the virtual AP Leadership Academy. And let me say formally to you now, Anibal, good morning to you and glad to see you here.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Glad to be with you, brother.
Yeah, man. We got so much to talk about. That my prelims went a few minutes over, but I had that
fire. It's that fire. I understand. I
had that extra fire, right? Hey, y'all, hit that share button, man. We got some good stuff coming today. You know, Anibal, I have this thing where before I read the bio, I ask every guest. You know, because there's some people that check in because they're looking for some inspiration. They're not always just looking for info. They're looking for fire, right? Something to get them through. Because you I don't have to preach that sermon to you. You superintendent, you know people are exhausted. You know people are just ready to get the summer break going. So with that, my question to you is, when you think about the last 7 days, what is a win, W-I-N? What is a win that you had, that you experienced, that you could share with us that may inspire or resonate with somebody else?
So I think my win will be a little differently probably than for some other folks. We're currently on spring break this past week. And so, right, you know, one of the things that I encourage my cabinet is to unplug and recharge. And, you know, when you don't see a lot of email activity, I mean, some of that feedback resonated. You know, people have taken that time to prioritize their well-being. This has been a tough 2 years, man. This pandemic has been brutal. Rules from state to state are different, and at least in New York, we have had, you know, different level of mitigation and approaches that have impacted our social emotional well-being for our kids, but also our adults, the people in the organization. So, for me, I think just a small victory was that I think a lot of the cabinet members and the principals and folks just took some time to kind of like, you know, revitalize, recharge, and I'm looking forward to getting back. We'll go back live on Monday. We're back. The kids will be ready for us first thing in the morning and excited. And so I would say that's not really a big win, like a, you know, achievement or something like that, but it's just a social emotional well-being win. I think we forget about taking care of ourselves in this work. And, you know, I know you preach that as well. So,
but that's, you know, to me, that's a big win. Because, you know, because you referenced the emails are not as heavy as say they would be under normal circumstances. So they heard you and took it down for the week, as opposed to I'm going to still, I'm not in my office, but I'm still going to work hard. Right. No, let me take it down and bring some balance in my life. So that's a big win, because somebody needs to hear that. There's somebody on here that's either on spring break, just finished spring break, or had it at some point, and they worked all week.
Yeah.
They went to the building, but here's the thing, and this was me back when I was much younger. They bragged that they were in the building. I take no days off. I don't even sleep. Right? I work. You know, because I mean that mindset is out there too, right? So something, you know, and people like myself and you that have been in this thing for a while, we learn over time that which you were bragging about, you really shouldn't have been doing. But sometimes we got to figure that out the hard way. Mine was a heart attack.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one thing I learned early on in my career is that we do important work in schools, right? It's just life, you know, life changing. But, you know, we're fortunate we don't have somebody necessarily on the operating table waiting for us. So we do have the opportunity to maybe respond to an email 24, 48 hours later. You know, that sense of urgency isn't there. But, you know, the game has changed a lot from the beginning of the principle, right? You got these devices, right? And people think like, what, he don't got his computer with him. He got his phone. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right. I'm gonna share your bio. Anibal, I tell my audience every week, I say some folks send me longer than others. You sent me a long one, and I was sitting here editing, right? And then I said to myself, I'm not gonna edit this. I said, because somebody needs to hear every paragraph. So folks in this audience, just hang with me for a minute. I'm gonna read fast because I literally sat here like putting X's through. Okay, I won't read this part. Then I said, somebody need to hear that part. So here we go. Mr. Anibal Soler Jr. is currently the superintendent of schools for the Schenectady City School District, an urban community located in Capital Region of New York State. The district serves approximately 9,500 students and 17 school campuses and has approximately 1,500 staff members. Before his appointment as superintendent of Schenectady City Schools, Anibal served as a superintendent in Batavia City Schools from January 2020 to July 2021. Batavia was a small city school district within a high-need community in Genesee County, New York. Prior to his superintendency, Anibal was associate superintendent of strategic alignment and innovation for Buffalo Public Schools, the second largest school district in New York State. In that role, his leadership focused on building and supporting strong community schools, a turnaround strategy used to move the district's lowest performing schools to schools in good standing. He also supervised district athletics and adult education division, and lastly, the district's My Brother's Keeper initiative, which we're going to talk about. Prior to his role as associate superintendent, Anibal was a principal at North Park Academy in North Buffalo, where he helped establish North Buffalo's first community school and helped transition the school from 5th through 8th grade school to a new pre-K to 8 community school. And before his role at North Park Academy, he served 7 years as a high school principal in Rochester City Schools in New York. Rochester is the state's largest school system in New York. Through his professional journey, he also served in prior capacities as an academy director, instructional technology teacher, and art teacher. Born of Puerto Rican descent, Anibal was raised by a teenage mother that never completed high school. Despite this, education was always valued as the fundamental stepping stone to improving his life and allowing him to help others. Molded by both his cultural and educational experience, he's become strong-minded a minority among the masses, a leader and an agent of change who is compassionate and true to his word. He inspires, encourages, and challenges others to reach their potential. His actions are selfless and centered on the community he serves. He believes it is his intrinsic responsibility to build a legacy by making a difference that is rooted in social justice and education. We're getting there. Prior to relocating to Buffalo, New York, Anibal was an inaugural member. Now, this is an important paragraph. Inaugural member of IBERO's, IBERO, Latino Education Task Force of Rochester, New York, which published research about the needs of Latino students in the Rochester City Schools and continues to advocate for those needs. He also served as an initial member of the Latino Educational Task Force of La Cumbre, an organization composed of local Latino professionals looking to advocate for and promote the success of Latinos in the Rochester community. Additionally, Anibal is a member of the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, ALAS, a national organization that advocates for Latinos and Latino educators. In 2011 and 12, Anibal was a charter member of the inaugural ALAS Superintendents Leadership Academy in 2011-2012. Currently, he serves as the communications officer and regional board member for the New York State Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, representing Western New York. In 2014, Anibal was recognized by President Obama. Let me say that again. In 2014, Anibal was recognized by President Obama and the White House as a Latino educator champion of change for his leadership and commitment to positive change for the Latino community. That's huge. That's huge. In 2019, Mayor Byron Brown of the city of Buffalo recognized Anibal as a champion of education as part of Buffalo's Hispanic Heritage Month celebration. In October 2020, Anibal was recognized as Damon College's Distinguished Alumni of the Year Award, the college's top honors for alumnus who are doing positive work in the community and in their professional field. And finally, In April 2022, Anibal was named to the Niagara University Education Leadership Advisory Council. In this role, he will be part of a council in helping advise and improve the university's leadership program and its focus on urban education. Anibal is a husband and proud father to 4 amazing kids. He enjoys sports, which we were talking about earlier, staying current with technology trends, and reading education-themed articles and books. He is also continuing his education as he looks to complete his doctorate in educational leadership at Manhattanville College. Whew.
Yeah. My bad. I didn't know we had links, so I just tried to give you background. So.
No, man, I said, let me, because like I said, everybody's got different need. And I'm sure there are folks in there that needed to hear that. And particularly that paragraph where I said this is important, which talks about, just that commitment to the Latino community. So I think I felt comfortable in reading that whole thing. So let's jump into it. With everything that you've accomplished, everything you've done in education. And by the way, folks, hit that share button for me, hit that retweet button for me. Let them know we're here, we're live, and we're going to go strong. With everything you've done in education over the years, what is it that continues to fuel your passion for this work?
Well, I mean, I think there's so much to do, Principal Kafele, that you try to figure out, where can you make a difference? What can you control? What are the things that need attention? I've always been a firm believer of if not you, then who? And, there's so much to do out there, so many communities. And so if you're not willing to put yourself in the work, you can't be on the outside to criticize the work. And so, I think far too often people are willing to say this needs to change, this needs to do better, this needs to do better. And so I've always taken the mindset of, well, how do I insert myself so I could be a part of that change? And so, all my life and, my parents' life, knowing their story with education and what it did or didn't do for them, and then what it's done for me, making sure that I provide that opportunity for others is critical. And when you're a systems leader, you're trying to do it across a system, right? When you're a principal, you're trying to do it in a campus. When you're an assistant principal, you're trying to support a principal who's trying to do it for a campus, right? The way I kind of look at it is basically it's a big wheel, and we're all spokes. And there's a Kafele spoke right now that's moving in that wheel, that's moving a certain body of work. And there's another spoke for school level administrators. And so, I think it's incumbent on us to if we're really truly going to make a difference in this world, is to leave the world better when you leave it. So that's kind of what drives me.
I love it. And closely associated with that question and your responses, as an educator, who is Anibal Soler, who will soon be Dr. Anibal Soler Jr.? Who are you?
I think I'm imperfect. I want to make sure I elevate that. I think there's a belief that when you get into these roles, that you know all the answers and that you have all the information. So, there's an Anibal at work, and then there's an Anibal at home. So there's, we talked about this a little bit, you and I, about these two different worlds we kind of live in. And when I'm at work, I love it. I love doing this work. I love staying engaged in this work, but I am imperfect. I don't always have all the right answers. I'm always incumbent on my team to help me figure out what we need to do to help kids, to support teachers, to improve our schools, improve our community. I'm a servant leader. I believe I serve first, whether it's supporting teachers and community and parents. I also believe that we are a customer-driven industry. We don't always recognize that, but we should be customer service related, orientated, because at the end of the day, we do serve our families and parents, and they don't work for us. We work for them, and we sometimes get lost in that, especially in urban communities, right? We get lost. Like I'm just going into work, clocking in. It's not like that. This is really it's a lifestyle. Like it's really, to be an urban educator, it's really got to be in your fabric as part of your DNA. So, but what I would say is I'm resilient. I work hard. I try to, as a former athlete, you try to control the controllables, right? And so, like, what can you control? Well, as a former athlete, I can control how much time I'm in the gym, how many shots I'm putting up, how hard I'm working when no one's watching, right? Same thing with education. So, I'm reading books, pulling out classics like, Kafele handbook, I'm always researching, always looking to be exposed to different things. And I'm a firm believer that you got to surround yourself with the right people, be in the right places, and do the right things to be better in your craft. And so I really try to do that in everything I do.
Yeah, in that last part you just said, surrounding yourself with the right people, somebody out there watching this morning or who will see the video later, I want that to resonate with you. You got to surround yourself with the right people. And that's not just on the professional side. That's not just in the building or at the job, but that's even in your personal life. You got to make sure that the right people are around you. And sometimes it's a real tough decision to kind of sever ties with people, but you got to do it. Even on social media, sometimes, I don't want to hit that block button, right? But sometimes I just got to, man. I don't always want to hit that unfriend, but sometimes I just got to, because there's certain people I just don't want you in my space no more, right? So those are tough decisions. But sometimes we got to make them. So, so the topic today, the AP through the lens of a superintendent. And I was very conscious about not saying the superintendent, right? We're talking about a superintendent, the one that's on the screen right now. So I want to talk to you about that. But before I get there, I got these 3 preliminary questions. And one is thinking about back when you were a principal. There are a lot of reasons that someone makes a decision to become one. Is there or was there in your life one that kind of superseded all the other reasons that you said, for this singular reason, I have to lead a school?
I don't think it was a singular reason, but it was the belief of others in me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you're on the grind as an up and coming AP, you're working hard, man. You're trying to make a name for yourself. And back then, social media wasn't as prevalent. Now you see a ton of APs, branding themselves and marketing themselves. But, it was one of those things. And I said this earlier, I believe it should be done this way. I believe it should be done this way. And so putting yourself around people who help see that in you, to say, hey, you know what? You're up next. I worked for a superintendent in Rochester who literally tapped me on the shoulder to say, you know what? You've been grinding enough as an AP. It's time for you to put in the work now and have your own building in your campus. And I didn't believe it. Because you never feel like you're ready. You never feel like you're ready to take that jump.
Yeah.
Because you aren't. You ain't never ready. There ain't no time to say, okay, I'm ready. You never are. And having some other people believe in me, putting me in that position to start my principalship. I did 9 years total, from high school and elementary and middle school. And it was, related to the superintendent. The principal is probably the closest position in the organization that mirrors the work of the superintendency.
Yeah. Before I jump into that whole AP discussion, I got these 2 questions I want to ask you. And I want to give it some context. I remember vividly when you and I met. Our meeting, I don't remember everybody that I met in terms of the circumstances, but you and I, it's very vivid for me. It always has been. I was at your district. You were an assistant principal. So this is going back. It's got to be at least 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I was still a principal. And you introduced yourself to me and you asked me a question. The question blessed me. It transformed my thinking. It challenged my thinking. And I never forgot that about you. Here's what happened. I was doing presentations at the times. It always said Black and Latino males, right? What as everybody does. And I know you remember, I see the smile on your face, right? So a lot of us do that. Blah, 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 Black and Latino males, blah, 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 Black and Hispanic males, that type of thing. So you challenged me. And I shifted that day. And I haven't been that guy to lump populations of people and children together since then, because of you singularly, right? So my question to you then, when we talk about strategies toward meeting the academic, social, and emotional needs of Black and Brown students, what is the challenge, if not the danger, in treating Black children, Latino children, any 2 groups or more of children as one combined monolithic group of young people?
Well, I think, first of all, that's a profound statement you said there about your memory and the fact that I made that influences. You're one of the GOATs in the work. And so to hear that had a little bit of impact, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I think the danger in grouping folks together by black and brown is that we lose some types of the identity of the people in front of us, the young individuals in front of us, and their stories. And it's tough. I mean, the makeup of our students now is much more diverse than when we talked 12 years ago, right? And there's also new groups of students who are looking for voice, looking for representation. You think about the growing work around inclusion, around LGBTQ plus, around that community. What it means to be a black trans boy, what does it mean to be a black trans student, what does it mean to be a Latino trans student? It's very different. So I think when you group groups together, we sometimes lose the individuality and the uniqueness of our learners. And so that's a challenge. It's hard. It's hard. I don't know the answer to it. What I do know is that you try to find what are the common strategies to support them. And, the one that always works for every group of kids is strong relationships with caring adults.
Yeah.
And so that's a universal strategy for improvement of anything. Any school improvement, any district improvement is creating a culture of love, creating a culture of support, creating a culture of inclusion, where we value and uplift other folks. We may not always agree, so we got to be clear, right? Because in leadership, you ain't always going to get consensus. Very, very often do you get consensus. And so you got to be able to try to move people, hear their stories, understand their stories, but also assure them that you're trying to do this to better, the organization as a whole. So, I think the biggest challenge is when we group kids in large groups, just like you heard my story in the bio, we all have different stories. And so sometimes you lose that. And so, that's the challenge.
Yeah, I love it. And, ever since that day, I just started looking at it through a different lens. And then, here I was in school districts where my students who were Latino, this is my earlier years, they were primarily coming from Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. But once I shifted over to Newark Tech specifically, now I got Latino students from all over Central America, all over South America. And I didn't necessarily see culturally the similarity with my Puerto Rican and Dominican students, right? It was, and even similarity between Puerto Rican and Dominican, right? So it was so to say just brown or Latino was a disservice, right? I mean, yes, it matters, but in terms of us having understanding, we had to go deeper, right? In terms of culturally understanding the various different young people that were in our school. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think the same is in every community. In the African American community is the same way, right? If you're black and you're born in the States versus you're black and you're born in Nigeria, you're coming in with different experiences, and we tend to group those folks together. I think linguistically, as a Latino student, language is a big variable for us. So, I'm Puerto Rican, grew up speaking Spanish at the home, but you asked me to write an essay, and I'm going to struggle because I didn't learn how to write it. So does that make me less Latino than the next person? So those are those identity challenges that we have within our own subset of communities. And again, it's similar for the Black community. You got folks who grew up here, a person who grew up in the South is very different who grew up somebody who's Black and grew up in the North, right?
That's right.
And so, I think those are just important variables to think about. But what I will say is, as you do this work, whether you're an assistant principal, a principal, your challenge is to find the common threads that support kids regardless of their stories. Again, mentorship, relationship building, strong, high expectations, culturally relevant content, right? Letting kids learn about other kids, letting them learn about their own story. And that was the most powerful thing about your presentation when I met you 12 years ago. It was the first time I ever seen somebody talk about the story of significant African-American figures that we hadn't been doing. 12 years ago, culturally relevant pedagogy was like a foreign thing that only only was in the book Dream Keepers, right? It was only based on research.
It's interesting you say that because I run into the former students a lot through social media. When I say former in this context, I'm talking about my very earlier years, my teaching days, my early years as a principal. And they will say what you just said to me. They'll say, Principal Kafele or Mr. Kafele, the things you were exposing us to, it seems like, they'll say to me, it seems like you were ahead of your time. Because what you were saying is what people are saying now. but you were instilling in us in the 80s and the 90s, right? So, and for me, it's like that's one of the greatest rewards that I receive when they get older, when they awaken to the world, and they say, "Wait a minute, I had a teacher that was giving this." Some of them, they'll say to me, "You were risking your job security." But we didn't know that. They say, when we think back on the things you taught back then, you put your job on the line for us. And I say to them now that they're adults, yeah, I sure did. Every day. Every day I put it on the line for you because I couldn't sugarcoat the truth. And in this case, the truth in history. Right. So appreciate you saying that. So, so moving on, my brother's keeper. And this is the last before I jump into this whole AP discussion. You've been heavily involved in My Brother's Keeper for a little while now. My Brother's Keeper New York in particular, President Obama's initiative to empower young men of color. And my question to you, with your involvement in it, why is this program so significant to your leadership?
So again, I think back in my own experience, and I was raised predominantly by my mom, single mom, my abuelo, my grandfather, who yesterday celebrated 2 years since his passing. But male figures is who I was looking for, right? I was always looking for, right? So when you're an athlete, your coach becomes a male figure. I still remember my first math teacher who was a person of color, and I remember these individuals, and we have a lot of boys and young men of color in schools that are still looking for someone to cling on to and to, again, focus on building that relationship. So for me, it's always been important to create this affinity group within the school system or in a school building, so that young men can have a group that they can learn. And, there's a lot of conversations around masculinity, right, in today's day and age, right? And, we have to create safe spaces for our young men to be vulnerable with people who care for them, who support them, because at the end of the day, the statistics don't show a good outcome for us, for young men of color. Yeah. And so we're going to truly disrupt that and change that narrative. We have to create these, in our case, My Brother Keeper chapters across New York State. Dr. Anil Austin, I know was watching. I mean, he's leading it. He's the apex, him and Regent Young for state ed.
Yeah.
They're leading it. But, I was fortunate enough to do it in Buffalo with one of my colleagues, Dr. Morrell. She's still doing it. She's still carrying the torch. She's fantastic. When I went to Batavia, which was a small rural community, we launched a My Brother's Keeper chapter. They had unheard of, right? There was kids of color there that they were looking for that. And then we came to Schenectady. We kind of relaunched it most recently here in Schenectady because we didn't have a brand. We didn't have a logo. And so, kids want that. That's like the positive gang you want them to be a part of, right? Like you want them, representing their shirts, walking in the community, that brotherhood, that fellowship. And if you think about it, we've allowed this to occur in higher ed for a while. Greek life, right? Think about being a Greek fraternity, right? Think about the sororities. What did that do to individuals of color at historically Black colleges? I mean, that's a whole nother session you can do here, right? On the impact of that. But and so that's kind of what we're trying to do, is create these fraternity, sorority type of experiences for kids in K to 12 that allow them to be vulnerable, allow them to grow, allow them to have a support network, and ultimately allow them to achieve.
Love it. Anibal, when I came into education in 1988, which was in New York, in Brooklyn, New York City, I came in there with this mindset that the young men could see. I went in there, I was very specific as to my purpose for teaching in the first place. My school was all Black. So obviously the students are Black, the boys are Black. I went in there because of those boys. But I had done all this reading before I entered education. I had done all this reading of African-American history, African diasporan history. So I felt like I knew a lot as it related to history. So I go into the classroom with this mindset that these children are brilliant because of their lineage. These children are extraordinary. I don't have the mindset of, say, society in the way we approach it. I'm like, these boys are descendants of greatness. So I want to show them their place along the continuum, or help guide them there so that they understand their role and responsibility. But here's the thing, as it relates to our conversation. The reality is that there's this achievement gap, right? It's there. I treated it very differently, which I'll get to later, but the reality is it's there. So the manifestation of a lot of these issues is that gap, or just the academic performance of Black and Latino, in this case, Black and Latino males, which I want to focus on, right? So for the sake of our audience, my question to you, there's a lot of assistant principals watching right now, and principals who are watching live or who will see the video later. But there are other levels of administrators on as well. What steps can they take toward ensuring that the teachers that they supervise, and the overall learning environment of their schools are conducive to young men of color being inspired to strive to maximize their potential?
Well, I would say this is Anibal's take on it. Again, my perspective, my experience. There isn't, and I say that because there isn't just one way to do this. There's a variety of ways. You've had some other guest speakers who have done some amazing stuff for young men and young women of color in their various schools, whether it's opening up the school at night and doing laundry and feeding them, and at times,
Yeah.
So I would say there's multiple ways to do it. What I would say is be intentional with whatever efforts you decide that you think are valuable, because every community has their own context, but be intentional with it. One thing I always do when I walk around, my district office is in a school building, so I get to walk around the school building.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things I do is I look to say, like, man, do kids see themselves in the hallway? Just ain't no one talking to nobody, right? If I'm just happen to walk down, what messaging am I saying? What signs are put up on doors? Because sometimes those nonverbals are the things that kids pick up on, right? Those silent cues. And then I ask myself, what type of programming are we intentional about? And again, to me, it's this intentionality, right? If you can force your teachers to think about, what are you doing intentionally? Don't wait for the system to tell you, do culturally relevant pedagogy. What are you willing to take upon on yourself to be intentional around that? Because sometimes systems take a while to come around to these movements, right? They take a while to even adopt or buy into these things. So, again, do you have any passionate people who really believe this is their calling? How are you maximizing and leveraging these people? So if I'm an assistant principal and I got a social studies teacher who is, Baruti Kafele 20 years ago, I'm leveraging him. Like, yo, let's get an after school program. Let me, I'm gonna cover your class so you can go meet with this group of boys, or I'm gonna get you a sub, or I'm gonna come work with you after school, and try to build that brand and try to build that intentionality around making sure that our kids see themselves present in the school. But it's not easy. It is not easy, because we are working in institutions that are, they're machines, man. They've been running this way for a while.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when people look at us, the whole equity conversation is really taking a lot of different forms depending on where you are in this country.
Yeah. And
sometimes that has become an impediment, to this work, where people are afraid to engage in it because they don't want to, like, I don't know, equity. They're going to think CRT. They're going to think, I'm calling them racist. No, we ain't calling you racist. We just want you to value and be inclusive of our kids. And so, but that is hard. And I think if you take some intentional steps every day as an assistant principal or principal, and maybe that's what you own as an AP, right? Because if you're an AP, you should really be owning a body of work that helps the overall mission of the school. And maybe that's something you take on if you're an assistant principal. And don't let your background dictate your ability to do the work, because all you need is passion. You just got to be excited about it. It's got to move you, because kids don't really care what your complexion is and what your personal story is, because some of my best people that I had, they just cared about me, and that's all I remember.
Yeah, I love it. And one of the things you said, it resonated with one of our viewers, Yolanda McKinney. She asked me, where's the lock? And the Yolanda is right here. and it's what you're speaking to, being locked in, right? Being locked in. Let's talk about the assistant principal here. I got quite a few questions I want to throw at you. As an assistant, as a superintendent, I should say, What are your expectations for your assistant principals relative to their daily responsibilities? But I want to ask that question to you differently. I use that as a backdrop. You walk into a school, which is inclusive of the school where your office is located, and you expect to see what out of your assistant principals?
Well, I think the first thing is, leadership is not done via email. Leadership is not done via sitting at a desk and a computer. So visibility to me is key. I want to see them in the hallways. I want to see them interacting. I want to see them walking room to room, checking in on things, just saying good morning to folks, because that's where you get the most bang for your buck in terms of your relationship with kids. Because when you do get a kid in conflict, they're going to already know you. They're already going to know, here goes Mr. So-and-so, or here goes Mr. So-and-so. But visibility is key, because also teachers, right? Teachers are looking for you. Teachers are looking for you like, hey, where is so-and-so? And that's how you build your credibility. So to me, that's important for assistant principals. It's also important for me for them to know, you got to know both worlds. And I think sometimes we get people so isolated where, I'm only doing instruction, or I'm an instructional leader. Like, student management is instructional leadership, because if you can keep kids engaged in their classroom, you're going to have less things to manage. And so you got to be able to kind of know both and be able to do both. Although I do feel that sometimes there are some people who are good at certain things and they can prioritize and emphasize that. But, for me, the biggest thing for an assistant principal is visibility, willingness to learn, willingness to listen, willingness to take some risk. Let me try this thing on behalf of kids. Let me try this initiative. Get groups of kids together. It's okay to hold an assembly. It may not go well, but don't hold an assembly because you're operating out of fear, because you're worried about kids' behavior or conduct, or you're worried about folks not, staff not really buying into what you're trying to do. Don't do that. Take the risk, know you're supportive. And, at the end of the day, the way I look at assistant principals, they're the bench. They're the bench of who's up next to be the next principal, right?
Yeah.
And so if we don't have a strong bench, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
So that's the best time for you to explore, be creative, do some different things as an assistant principal, right? Because you got as long as you're in an environment that's supportive. But if you're not, then you could be hesitant and say, like, I'm just going to do bare minimum. I'm going to lay low. I'm going to get my tenure, and I'm good. I don't want that. I hope if you decide to be an assistant principal for 10 years, it's because you chose that, not because you were afraid to take the jump to be a leader of a building.
As I'm a sports guy and you're a sports guy, for the person out there that's not a sports guy, explain to them what you meant by the bench.
Yeah. So who's up next, right? So, we want, every principal has a shelf life, some of them go long periods of time. And for us in baseball, they, who's up next out of the pitching, the bullpen, who's up next on basketball, who's the sixth man coming in because someone went down. And so sometimes you need to have an organization that has a bench, because principals will retire. Principals will move on to district level positions. Principals will want to become superintendents. And when that void is filled, you want to go to your bench, because who better to go to your bench, because they know your organization, they know your kids, they know your community, they know your systems. And so, that's the hope. But that doesn't mean that you can't find people outside. It's just sometimes a little more difficult because, there's a learning curve.
Anibal, my life shifted professionally when I took a thought of mine and made it public. Let me share it with you. I wrote an essay, a blog post from my blog page entitled The Assistant Principalship, the most misunderstood and underutilized position in all of education. I had always thought that, I had articulated that, but I had never written it in an essay that people could read about it, right? So I write this essay, it goes viral. I've never written an essay that went viral. I've written over 60 different articles and blog posts, but to my knowledge, none of them went viral. This one went viral. Because it went viral, I said it resonated with people. Let me write the follow-up book, and that became the Assistant Principal 50. That just went bananas, and it spawned this platform. So had I not articulated the most misunderstood and underutilized position in all of education. This platform doesn't exist. My focus is not what it is now, because this is my primary focus, the assistant principal, not the principal, right? So I say that to say this. The assistant principalship, the most misunderstood and underutilized position in all of education. You're a superintendent. What does that, agree or disagree, doesn't matter. What does that mean to you when you hear that?
So I think intentionally it's been too focused. It's been either deal with discipline or do teacher observations. I mean, those are like the two things that you mainly think about when you hear assistant principals, right? Go observe teachers or go handle student behavior. And, I think really where it should be is two things. One is you got to build the next principals in your organization. So getting them exposed, getting them to the professional development, growing them, and then empowering them, right? Like giving them some responsibility and some power within the school building to make some decisions that ultimately, obviously, everything goes up to the principal, but it's their job to make that principal's vision for that campus a reality.
Yeah.
And you can't just do that if all you do is just deal with, student behavior or parental complaints or you're just dealing with the buses, right? I'm just doing buses in the morning. I get my walkie-talkie, my coffee. We're good. All buses are in at a certain time. We're good. I'm good for the day. Assistant principal, I'm good. I'm gonna go do lunch duty, and I'm gonna do dismissal, and that's my day. That's not really what we want. And so, but oftentimes that's what it gets used for, right? It gets used for these management type of task-oriented positions. They should just be more levers of change within the organization. Assistant principals are really principal assistants, right? Like if you flip the name around and say like they're a principal assistant, not an assistant to the principal. They're a principal assistant, which means they are the next up and coming principal, whether for that community or for another community. And I think assistant principals got to treat themselves that way. I think one thing that when I was in AP, I knew I wanted to be a principal. So I was hungry. I was working. I was trying to figure. I'll take care of that. I'll do that. I'll lead that. I'll go that. I'll learn that. I'll go to that conference. I'll read that book.
Yeah.
And you make mistakes along the way. So I do want to be clear on that. Throughout the journey from assistant principal to principal, I made errors. Professionally, personally, but I've always been of this mindset, to fail forward, learn from it, make adjustments, and land somewhere at a better place than you were before. And sometimes you forget that this is a journey. It's long. It's not a sprint. It's a journey. And when it's all said and done, you want to be able to look back at it and say, man, everything I did, every position I held got me better for the next position.
Yeah. So as that assistant principal or that principal assistant, right? Through the lens of a superintendent, and that's, again, I crafted it that way, not the superintendent. Through the lens of a superintendent, meaning yourself, what do you see as what should be the core role or the core responsibility of the assistant principal in a building?
I think they need to have set focus within the school, and it's got to be around a change initiative or an improvement initiative. So if, and we know that, regardless of where you believe about testing, typically that's one of the biggest accountability measures we got to do. Empower them to lead some of that improvement effort. Don't just be relying on, I'm meeting with a group of teachers, but let me get back to y'all. I got to go talk to the principal first. I think there has to be this distributed leadership model where the principals can be empowered enough. And then here's the one thing that I always found a big test of an assistant principal. If I can't pull a principal out to meet with them because they're fearful of the school, going down in flames, now we got a problem with the assistant principal, right? There should be no difference when the principal is not in that building and the assistant principals are running the show. No one should be able to tell. Kids shouldn't be able to tell. Staff shouldn't be able to tell. And so that's ultimately what you want to get to. But there are some dynamics you got to work with, right? There's, different leadership styles. You got certain principals that like to micromanage and they don't want to give certain control. They're afraid, they're fearful, right? Because accountability never leaves them, right? They're at the end of the day, they're the principal, they're accountable for the work. And so how do you distribute that responsibility, empower the assistant principals, knowing that ultimately the accountability is going to fall on the principal? But if you do this work well, we all win, right? And that's the biggest thing for me. Like, there's enough for us to all win. Yeah. Just like in the world of consultants and speakers, right? There's enough work for all of us to eat, right? We can all eat. You know what I mean? We don't got to fight with each other. Let's all lift each other up. Let's work. You don't got to be number one. We can all be number one, right? Like, And so I think we forget about that sometimes. And, schools are organisms of their community, and sometimes they become competitive amongst each other, right? Which I'm okay with that to an extent, because at the end of the day, we're still one organization. And so if an AP moves from one school to another school, you want to be able to know that they could still have the ability to, support staff, support kids, support families, and grow excellence in the school.
Yeah. Now, I see Marino Moran. I kept this up here because he said something, but then as he wrote it, he answered his own question. But I wanted to incorporate it into our conversation here. He said, how can I advocate for my own growth and development as an AP? How can I approach someone to mentor me? Sometimes you have to be your own advocate. So what I'm seeing is that you did answer your own question, Moreno, or I think I'm saying it correctly. But I still want to go to your first two questions. How can I advocate for my own growth and development as an AP? And the second one, how can I approach someone to mentor me? My first, I'm going to turn this over to you, Anibal, but I'm going to say this much. If I'm hungry, and I'm saying this for the benefit of the audience, if I'm hungry for something, like there's something that I could see, but I don't have it yet, I'm going to connect myself to the people who can open the door. I've shared this on this platform before. I'll say the very brief version very quickly. I became a principal after 1 year of AP. And the reason was because at a young age, I had the wherewithal to know that the one person who could open up the door for me was the superintendent. So I wasn't trying to align myself with the director of this and the assistant superintendent of that, because they can't open up the door. The superintendent was the one that could open up the door. So I made him a friend by just staying in his space. Wherever he was, I showed up. If he had a speaking engagement, I was there sitting in the front row. If he had this program within the district, I'm there. Wherever he was, his shadow was me. So now, because of that, I got to know him. And so now I had his ear. Hey, Doc, put me in this role. And if you do, your life becomes better. Right? I'm not being arrogant, but I'm positioning myself that this man sees this young cat is hungry. And that's the bottom line. Right? Not my ego getting in the way that I can't do that. So that's my personal answer to you, Moreno. I'm saying, when you say, how can I approach someone to mentor me? Go to that person and let them know you're hungry. And ask them. The worst they could say is, I don't have time, right? Or I don't want to do it, whatever. But you got to take that initiative with people. Now, I'm not saying come to me. Not that I don't want to mentor you, but what I am saying, I live on airplanes, right? I don't even have that kind of time, right? I live on airplanes. I have a life that most people could not live. Right. So, but there are other people that know the things that folks need to know in order to get to that next level. I tell folks with me, just check my videos, check my books, and anything I would say to you, my blogs, it's in that material. Anything you want to add to that, Anibal?
Yeah, I think I saw a comment from one of my teachers who was our Schenectady Teacher of the Year, Carrie White. We want to uplift her for attendance. She's a teacher. She's in here. Carrie White. She makes a point to say there's teachers on the bench too. Teachers on the bench looking for mentorship and looking to be lifted. So I do want to uplift that. She's definitely a model for many of our staff. She's an irreplaceable, we like to call them, because if I could throw water on her and duplicate her, we would do that. But she's fantastic. What I would say
but congrats to Carrie White.
Yeah, Carrie White. Yeah, that's all
congrats
good.
To you, Carrie.
What I would say too is just quickly from Moreno's, I think I say his name, Moreno Moran, his point here is, I think you can hit it on the head. I mentioned this earlier. People, places, things. Like, I didn't just become a principal I was like you, at the workshops, at the keynotes, at the conferences. And sometimes there's a fear to this brown nosing, right? I think I saw somebody put it, oh, you brown nosing, oh, you got something on your nose. Nah, man, your network ultimately determines your net worth. But the work ain't done once you get there, though, right? Because now you got to prove that you're actually worth something. So some of your folks, your network can help open up doors, but once you get in the door, now you got to prove it. Because guess what? They'll be quick to drop you if you don't do your work, right?
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I got you this opening, and then you didn't handle your business. The next time I ain't helping you open another door. And so, I think there's nothing wrong with that mentality. Some people call it, closing your circle, getting a tight circle of the right people, and studying people. Again, Dr. Pedro Noguera, right? National, renowned expert, right? Renowned, right? And he sees me at a conference. He know me, right? And I know him, and we show love. I never really worked with the brother, but I'm supporting him. I'm doing his research, knowing where he's going to be presenting, going to these things. And I feel like we're colleagues now in this work and being able to uplift each other. And, it's that crazy. That's how this works. It's that crazy. We're right here virtually. You've got hundreds of people, hoping maybe thousands will view this video. They now have another advocate here in this region. If they want to connect and you want to email questions, I mean, I ain't flying on a plane like you. I am trying to get a doctorate, but I got 4 kids and a wife who sometimes gets neglected in this work. But listen, man, at the end of the day, I got this on my shirt. I am my brother's keeper.
That's it.
And if we don't open the door for the next generation or for the next group, we're doing a disservice to all of our legacies. And so people have done it for me. It's my responsibility to do it for others. And sometimes you do get some criticism for that, or you just bringing up people Yeah, because they're about to handle their business. They're about to do their work. And
I wouldn't need for someone out there that may see that as brown nosing. Let me correct that. It's not brown nosing. It's people skills, right? It's positioning yourself for your next level, as opposed to sitting in the crowd with the 1,000 others that want the same one vacancy, right? You can send in your resumes. You can do that for the next 20 years if you want to. Right. And sit up in them boring interviews and do all that kind of stuff. Or you can position yourself for your next position. Right. Position yourself for that next door to open up for you. That's a personal choice. I'm where I am today in terms of my career because I've always positioned myself. Matter of fact, let me holler at somebody out there real quick, and I'm gonna get right back to this question. All these places that I keynote, I'm talking about the biggest stages now. All these places that I keynote folks out there, once upon a time ago, just about I say 99% of them wouldn't even let me come in and do a breakout session, right? I mean, they reject my proposals. They would reject them. But then here I am years later, I'm the opening keynote in places I couldn't get in because I positioned myself to get those jobs, man. You got to position yourself. But that's for another session. Let me ask you the question. Looking at that assistant principal and just whatever it is typical that they do, stereotypical, as you mentioned, the discipline of the role of the assistant principal. What is it that when you see the assistant principal that you said to yourself within the capacity of superintendent, here's something that I need to either shift, pivot, evolve, or even disappear from the assistant principalship?
Wow, I think that I never really thought about it like that. I'm looking at it as how do I position these people to be ready to step up next? How do I position these people? Do they have the right principal leading them? Right? Like, we got to also look up a little bit, right? Sometimes it's not the right principal leading the assistant principals. In this world of staffing shortages, right? We're all struggling for staff in education right now. Sometimes there are also some challenges when you recruit leaders of color, right? Sometimes that leader of color is working for someone who may not be of color, that may have some challenges on their approach to leadership. And I think it's your job as a superintendent to create that culture within the organization where people have that freedom to kind of lead, grow, again, be vulnerable, but then also be supportive. I don't know if there's anything I would want to necessarily disappear. I do want to make sure that, student management is always going to be part of the work, right? It's not to say that you ain't going to do any of it, right? But I do want to make sure that we create people who are versatile enough to have a restorative conversation with a group of kids and also have the same conversation with a group of adults around instruction, around pedagogy, around, a process that maybe didn't go well. I also need leaders who are okay to apologize to staff. Like, yo, teachers, we messed up. Like, okay, we could have did the bell schedule better. I always tell my team, my executive team, when we mess up, I'll take the blame. I don't care if which one of y'all, mayor did it. I'll fall on the sword for the group, and then we keep moving forward. because that's my responsibility as their leader, right? As my leader of my assistant soups and my deputy soup and my cabinet, that's my job. And so I think, one thing I would love to see is more of an intentional investment in that group. I think that's where I got to get better in an organization. We do principal meetings every month, right? But then what do we do with assistant principals, right? Like, do we pull them out to have that kind of opportunity for professional development? So that's kind of one thing I'm thinking about, is how do I grow that bench intentionally as an organization so that when people do leave and get promoted and move to other communities, it's easy. We got 30 people ready to come up next. You know what I mean? We ain't struggling.
Yeah. Anibal, how do we create, how does one create a culture within a school where there's a desire, there's an intentionality toward ensuring that assistant principals are fully prepared for one day becoming principals of schools? Because I wasn't prepared. All I knew how to do was discipline. All I knew how to do was order teacher supplies and deliver them. And all I knew how to do was load buses and supervise the cafeteria. But outside of that, I knew nothing.
Yeah, I think we all knew that, right? Because that's all that stuff that we just used to, right? Because it's all relationship building. You can put me in any crowded room. I'll find a couple kids I can talk to. How do I interact with them? Oh, you got some Jordans on? I can break a kid down quickly by just quickly scanning them, trying to figure out an entry point in their conversation. I think the other piece is, what are we doing in the summers with our assistant principals? Like, how are we growing them in the summers? Master scheduling, like, shouldn't just be the principal, or it shouldn't just be the assistant principal only doing that.
Mm-hmm.
How we're doing teacher interviews, recruiting talent, letting them market the district, letting them market their school. Those are the type of things that I'm just kind of quickly thinking of that we can do. But it is a process, and it isn't going to happen over time. And to go back to the earlier question that Moreno asked, there has to be some willingness on the AP, right? To also, right? Because it's easy to just, show up, do the minimum, and bounce. Because I don't get the accountability like that. The principal's going to have to deal with that, not me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm good. I'll deal with my alphabet. I'll deal with my kids and my caseload. I'm good. The rest of the building, there was a fight somewhere else. That wasn't in my part of the building. You know what I mean? Right. Like, we got to have that ownership, that the success of the school isn't just in the wing that you supervise or the grade level that you're in charge of, right? It is all of us and how we struggle. And so a lot of it is mindset. A lot of it is changing that culture. There's so much you can get from sports around team. If the principal is the captain, don't mean that they're the best player on the team, right? I saw one of my former teammates in the chat here, Eder Joseph.
Yeah,
he's principal. I mean, that's fantastic. I love watching his story and watching what he do. I mean, he was the hardest working cat on the team. He was a beast, but he wasn't the captain, but he was my guy. When things went down, that's who we went to. Like, when things went down, I knew he was going to go down there and get us a rebound and muscle up and do whatever he had to do. But he wasn't the best player on the team. He was the hardest working, and it made us better collectively as a group.
That's solid. That's solid information. I put him up there because I wanted you to see that he was on.
Oh, yeah. That's my brother, man.
That's your brother, college teammate. Closely related to the question I just asked you, we can call this a part B. How does one ensure that the principal understands how to utilize the assistant principal, and going beyond just understanding, but implementation of using that person effectively as an assistant to the principal?
Man, I mean, I think it's almost giving them a shelf life.
Yeah.
Like, not allowing, within the first 4 to 5 years, you should know if folks are ready to take that step.
Yeah.
I mean, you said 1 for you.
Yeah.
Like, you was ready in 1, but I think that's a little, why you are who you are. You're a little unique, talented, and you have some of that. I always tell people you can't PD some of the things that Principal Kafele got. You can't PD that it factor, right? Yeah. And so I think if there's a way for us to look at every assistant principal and charge ourselves and say, in the next 4 to 5 years, this person's got to be ready to take the helm. And that goes in like creating opportunities for them to be the leader in terms of like summer school. The AP, you should be summer school principal. That's a great opportunity for you to learn in a safe environment some of these challenges on how to be a principal. After school programming, let them lead after school programming. So figuring out how we do that. But if I'm an assistant principal, I got to know going into the role, just like I was a teacher and I left the classroom to be an administrator, it's not finite. It can't just stop at assistant principal. Again, principal assistant, meaning, so eventually I want to lose that assistant title and just become principal. And then at that point, determine how long I want to do that work. And if you're doing this work well, it is hard. It is, you get worn down. And I don't know if you can do it forever. You know what I mean? People who are 20, 30-year principals, I think that time and age has kind of changed. I think that time, and you don't see that no more with the accountability standards out there that we got now with ESSA, and before that was NCLB. So it's hard to see people do this principal role for 30 years. It's hard. That world has changed.
Yeah.
Those Joe Clarks of the world, that world is different.
Different world.
And so even looking at that, that's why I say that bench. Who's up next in 5 years? Who's up next 6, 7, maybe a decade? And I also think community context matters too, Principal Kafele. Some communities don't require certain things, and we have to be okay with that and know that.
Yeah.
Some more affluent communities may not require some of the things that we've been talking about today.
Yeah.
My lens has always been urban for the most part, and it is hard work, man, and it is it could be life changing, heart attack type work. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You know how that goes. So that's why you got to take care of yourself.
Yeah. It's interesting what you just said about the longevity of a principal. My principal, when I was in middle school, we're talking about the class of 74, is still a principal. He's 80. What's he now? I think he's like 85, 86 or something. He was Whitney Houston's principal as well.
Wow.
Right. And so he got a lot of national exposure when she passed, because everybody wanted to talk to her former principal and teachers and all that on the news. So he's somebody that I'm probably going to bring on this platform at some point to talk about how is it that you have endured 40 plus years of principalship. That's a long time of doing this. But I just wanted to throw that at you. Most that's an extreme. That's an aberration. We're not going to see too much of that in our lifetimes, right?
Right.
But moving on, another term or another concept that I guess I coined, the attitude gap, closing the attitude gap. Then went on and, as I said with the other, wrote the book, right? Closing the attitude gap, which I guess you
right here, baby.
It is closing the attitude gap.
I got them all here, man.
And I said, I appreciate that. And I said in a nutshell that the attitude gap is the gap between those students who have the will to achieve excellence and those who do not. So I'm not putting emphasis on skill nor ability. I'm putting emphasis here. But then subsequent to writing the book, I said the teachers, there's a gap there too, which I call the attitude gap, the gap between those educators who have the will to be amazing at their craft and those who do not. So this gap and everything in between toward closing that. So my thought here for you is that attitude gap is real. It's an outgrowth of the achievement gap, which is very real, that most of us are grappling with in our careers in whatever capacity upon which we serve. So since my focus is the AP, my question to you, what role or roles can an assistant principal play toward closing the achievement gap relative to the teachers that he or she supervises?
So I think the you got to treat staff just like you do kids. I always tell people, if you don't feed the staff, they're gonna eat the kids, right? Like if you don't take care of them, they're gonna eventually take it out. And so there are a lot of stressors in the work in the COVID-19 era that we're still we're trying to work out of. And so our staff have covered sub positions. They've done more teaching than they probably should be doing just to keep our doors open. And so I think assistant principals are that immediate intermediary before you get to the principal, right? You go in and you build that relationship with a group of adults around a group of kids. Like, how do we get these kids through? What do we have? And they have the ability to have the conversation more often than sometimes the principal does, because the principal obviously is looking over the whole organization or the whole school campus. And so sometimes they can't get to every grade level meeting, every common planning time, every, department meeting, but the assistant principal can, because they should be facilitating and leading that. But I also think they got to figure out what's the why of the teachers, why are they doing this work, so they can help them see the how, right? Like how to do this work better. And some folks, have lost their why. And so I think it's incumbent on the assistant principals to help teachers figure out, why are we still doing this? Why are you still here? Again, treat people with dignity, treat them with respect, but sometimes you got to have some of that dialogue. And then your job as an assistant principal is maybe create those conditions where that why can get reignited. Maybe there's a couple kids the teacher's struggling with. You know what? Keep them with you for the day. Let that teacher say, look, I got you. I'm gonna take Kafele and Anibal. I'm taking them with me to my office today. You go ahead and do what you gotta do with those kids. And then during lunch, we're gonna huddle up and have a circle with these kids and say, all right, look, so-and-so cares about you. They're just struggling with you. Help me understand how they can teach you better. But it's intensive, it's time consuming, it's hard, because you're still juggling everything else, right? You still got 200 and some kids on your caseload. You still got to get these compliance activities done as well, right? And so, I think it's the job of the assistant principal to also manage some smaller groups of adults. And if you have more than one AP in the building, now you're covering the whole campus, and the principal is managing the assistant principals, and so it kind of trickles down.
So let me ask you this then: with all, as you said toward the end, with all the other stuff that an AP has on his or her plate, can an AP, and I'm asking this for the benefit of all the APs watching, the aspiring APs, and even the principals that supervise APs, can an AP be a highly effective instructional leader given what's on their plate?
So I would say that first, I'm a believer that highly effective is a place you visit, but not a place you live, right? Because I don't think you're always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to be there for a moment, and then something's going to humble you and bring you back down. And you're like, oh man, just because the nature of the work is adaptive. The nature of the work is every day is different. Our kids come in with their best every day, but sometimes that best is not what we were expecting, right? Same thing with the adults that we're working with. So I would tell you that it's important that our assistant principals have the familiarity with the language, have the familiarity with the contents and the concepts of what high quality instruction looks like, can speak to it, can maybe model it. And if they can't model it, that they're willing to go out themselves to learn more about it, to observe it, to put themselves in a position to ask their principal, help me understand your vision of strong instruction in the building. Because I got to be able to carry that message through the department. But it is difficult. So I don't want to, this is one thing I always hear, like, I'm too busy dealing with, student management. I can't do the instruction. You've got to think about what are supports in the building. Like, what's the role of the counselor? What's the role of the social worker? How can they help with this cycle of support around kids so that you can protect some of your time to be, instructional? What systems have you set up to protect that instructional time, right? Like, when a kid gets sent out of class, they shouldn't always have to come to you. They should be able to go to the secretary's office, sign in, wait for you to come out of whatever you're doing. You've got to kind of create that culture and build those systems that protect your time from when you're in a class. But again, I believe that none of us are distinguished. None of us are highly effective all the time. We may visit it, right? But we come down, right? Like, again, go back to sports. Michael Jordan was highly effective for a little while, but after a while, he started to come down. Then he was playing for the Wizards, right? He was not that highly effective anymore, right? But he was there. He was still good. He was still good. Had moments, but
he wasn't MJ.
Exactly. Yeah.
So closely related to that, then, this word equity, you had mentioned it earlier on, and you put it in the context in which I'm going to deliver to you, where you said that it's received in different ways depending on what part of the country you're in. I've said on this platform before, I may have said it as recent as last week, there are folks that invite me to come in and conduct trainings who will ask me to cover issues of equity, but please do not mention the word equity. Now that sounds insane to me, but it's the world we live in right now. So for me, the hottest topic in education, this is just from what I see through my lens, is equity. But interestingly, it's a hot topic relative to the prospects of what equity can produce. But it's also a hot topic in the sense that it's very controversial, as you were saying, in certain places. certain districts, certain schools that don't want any parts of it. So my question in terms of the positive way of looking at it, how can, and I'm asking you these questions through the lens of a superintendent as the topic is, how can an assistant principal ensure that equity in the truest sense abounds in the classrooms of the teachers that he or she supervises? And let me say this to you, Anibal, real quick before you answer that. I'm asking that question rooted in my own definition of equity. So I want to share that with you. Meeting young people where they are, ... as they are. Again, meeting young people where they are as they are. So with that being said, what can an assistant principal do to ensure that that equity abounds with the teachers that he or she supervises in those classrooms?
So using your definition, what I would say is, because I think that's important to be bound by your definition, because everyone defines equity differently. Some people say it's the same thing for everybody. Equitable and equity get interchanged a lot inappropriately.
Yeah.
So what I would say an assistant principal can do is just making sure that the kids in their supervision or in their care with their teachers have access and opportunity to quality.
Yeah.
And so, if it's homework assignments, right? That's a big topic, right? Kids get beat up on homework assignments, right? But did we create an equitable approach for homework? Does all of it have to be done one certain way? Because not everyone may have access to things like the internet at home, right? So did we assume kids could do research when they got home on certain topics, or did we create opportunities for those kids to have access to that technology to maybe support them? Maybe not every kid is good on testing, right? I know I'm still not a good test taker, right? But you give me a performance, you let me draw a picture, you let me do some kind of artwork, I'm putting in work. You know what I mean? That's my thing, right? So did we do that from an equity standpoint when we assess our kids in classes? Did we allow some of them to work in groups, some of them to work individuals, some of them to do maybe a report, some of them to maybe do a presentation? Those are equitable type practices or equity driven type practices that assistant principals could encourage teachers to do. Because at the end of the day, you just want to know if the kid learned the content. You don't know, it doesn't matter what method, right? It doesn't matter how they did it. You want to be able to create an opportunity for them to just prove that they know it, that they know how. Sometimes project-based learning gets a bad rap, but that's really a great equity strategy, right? Project-based learning, right? Because kids, are going to learn things differently in different formats. And so I think those are some of the things that I would recommend the APs could do to protect that for giving kids access. What I would say with the word equity, I like to focus on like inclusivity, because I think it's and this sounds inappropriate, and some people may take it, and I apologize if they do. Some folks implicitly can't move beyond that racial portion of equity, right?
Yeah.
But when you start talking about inclusivity, it feels safer for them because it doesn't feel like they've done anything wrong.
Yeah.
When we're talking about racial equity, there's sometimes a belief by certain groups that they were at fault for something. We're not saying that you're at fault, but we got to make sure that you help disrupt some of those things that now you don't continue to carry on. And so I like to tell people, like, all right, let's think about equity from an inclusive standpoint. Who's in the room? Who's got access to the decision making? Who have we spoken to? Have we been inclusive enough? Because if you're being inclusive, you are being equity driven.
No, I'm with you. And that's why I use that very generic definition, meeting young people where they are, ... as they are, as opposed to, see, I'll get to the racial, cultural components later on. But to start off, I want to make sure that student individuality is at the heart and soul, the center of this discussion, that student A and student B and student C have very different needs from one another. And then we'll get to all that those other components later on in the discussion, meaning when I'm doing a training. But first, Principal Kafele and Anibal Soler have very different needs, and they may have come up in very different worlds that impact who they are in the classroom in real time. And that's, and hence that definition that I use. Great stuff. I know time is late for you. I got two more. You got time?
Yeah, I got time for you, brother. We're good.
All right. So here we go. These are short. when you're interviewing a candidate for the principalship coming out of the most likely out of the assistant principalship, it may be out of other positions, but when you're interviewing that candidate, what is it about that interview that you might conclude this person could be a great fit? What is it about that person, just overall? I don't need you to give me all that detail with that. Just something that you say, I think
yeah. So one is, I like to look at the affect. How what's their disposition? Do they have some passion around when they're answering questions? Because some of the stuff, I mean, let's be honest, right? You could teach people how to interview, right? You could teach people how to say the right thing, differentiated instruction, whole group instruction. You can teach people keywords, terminology. I'm a lifelong learner, right? So I often mix up my interviews and I really have conversations with candidates to say, tell me about the most recent book you're reading and why did you choose that book? Because I want to see who they are as a individual, because oftentimes that drives what they're going to do with kids and the work. We have a major pillar in our strategic plan around passionate people. And so I got to be able to see that passion when we're talking. I can't just, have you be robotic and, just be regimented. Here's my portfolio. Here's my 90-day entry plan. I mean, those things are great. I'm going to look at those after you leave. I want to know about you. What drives you? Who are you as a person? What do you do for fun? Because those are the things that, if you tell me oh, I love work, all I do is work, and then, I'm gonna be a little alarmed, right? I'm gonna be like, whoa, I also look to see, tell me what's the last professional development you went to? What did you get from it? How did you implement it into your classroom? How did you implement it into the school building? I'm also going to look at, what are their references? Who are their references? Those types of things tell a story about a candidate. And then you often talk to people who aren't listed, right? Let's be honest, right? You talk to see, oh, they're at this school, so they didn't list the principal, they work at that building. Yeah. They didn't list the room. Why is that? And you try to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
But the reality is, you're looking at the affect, you're looking at this passion, you're looking at this energy. You're trying to look at other things that, that tell the story of the candidate beyond the resume, because people have gotten good at that world, right? The resume, the courses, the certifications. Mm-hmm. I went to all Kafele's AP Leadership Institutes. Okay, great. Well, tell me what you did with that and how did you implement it and what was the outcome?
Yeah, that's
a different conversation. They're like, oh man, shit, I don't even remember an episode, but I just wanted to put it on my resume.
No, I agree with you. That's why I've said to folks over and over, I've never looked at a portfolio in my life. I have no interest in a portfolio. If I can kind of read them, and they may feel better if I open it and kind of pretend I'm looking at it. But I'm like you. I want to have the conversation. I'm gonna know if I'm going to know if you're a good fit based on that conversation. And depending on what time I schedule it, I got all day to talk. Right. So if you got somewhere you got to run, then you don't want this anyway. Right. But if I bring you in, say 5 o'clock, I might have 2 hours to just sit back and let's just talk. Forget about the word interview. Let's just talk. And I'll know after them 2 hours. In fact, I'll probably know after the first 10 minutes. But the 2 hours, I'll know if you're somebody that's going to fit here. And then you interview me at the same time to make sure that you want to be here. Right. So with that, here's the part B to the same question. When you're interviewing that candidate for the principalship, what is it about that interview that you might conclude this is a bad fit for us?
I mean, we talked about the word equity. I often ask people to define it. What does it mean to me, and how do I see it through your practice as a leader, as a school classroom teacher? I ask that when I interview them. Our process is all final candidates come to me, and we interview them. I say, look, what does equity mean to you, and how do I see it present in your practice? That's it. You get some interesting responses, right? Like you see some blind spots. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that's the make or break question, but that helps me inform them. I also ask them things like, what do you do for fun? Because work can't be all you do, right? You got to be able to know the person beyond their work. What drives you? Yeah. So I would tell you, if I feel that the interview is too robotic, too scripted, I want to have a conversation. I want to see the authenticity in the person's responses. I want to watch, I look at eye contact a lot. I want to make sure you're looking at me. I'm looking at you. Yeah. There's a level of nervousness. You walk into the superintendent's office. I get it. I always tell people, relax. We're just in here. This will be a very different experience for you. And I include my cabinet, my leaders, because they're making recommendations to me around, they see somebody who should be, able, and I see one of my assistant superintendents, Andrea, she just chimed in here. She said, "Can you meet young people where they are?" That's what we want. We want people to say, "I'll meet you where you are, but I'm gonna work hard to get you up," and that's equity work, right? And so, so I would say it's a variety of things, and I hate to say it, but you go a little bit with your gut sometimes and say like, I need to think about it a little bit more. And sometimes you just know right away, like you said, first 10 minutes. I like this. I think kids are going to love and gravitate to this person. I think adults are going to gravitate to this person. So it's not really something that you can say it's a science, but you do have to have a lot of practice in it and be able to pick up, BSing when you can see it. And you know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, let's go to them BAM questions.
Ready.
Impact. There you go. Yeah. It's 20 questions. Give me one word or one sentence, right? Most people struggle with this. Let's see how you do. Ready? Here we go.
Yep.
Is education on the right path for underserved children?
Wait. Repeat that one more time.
Yeah. Is education on the right path for underserved children?
No, it's not on the right path.
Can true equity occur in America's schools for Black, brown, and other underserved students?
Since I'm in the work, I will say it can occur, but it won't be easy.
Does Anibal Soler work contribute to the progress we desperately need?
Yeah, if I felt it didn't, I would retire and walk away and go do something else.
Find something else to do. If you could do a reset on your life, would your line of work be different or the same?
Nope, it would be this. It would be the same. It would just be around helping people, but I'm assuming education would be where I land again.
Why do you continue to do this work?
Because I think it's rooted in who I want to be. I want to leave a legacy, and I want to have a story that said I help people be better.
What fires you up within the work that you do?
Knowing that even if it's just one kid that I made a difference in, that's what matters.
What do you dislike about the work you do?
I think everybody says this is the politics answer, but
that's everybody's answer.
I would say the bureaucracy, though, because sometimes it's not about kids, it's about systems compliance versus about engagement and authenticity around improvement.
What has been your greatest victory in this work?
Staying in it for 22 years.
That's a long haul. What was your greatest mistake in this work?
Believing that people would treat you with integrity and respect when things didn't go well.
What has been your greatest challenge in this work?
Staying committed to the work, staying committed to who you are when you face adversity.
Are you proud of your first year as an assistant principal?
Yeah, it was hard, but yeah, scary, nervous, all that.
Are you proud of your first year as a principal?
Yep.
Who inspires you in this work?
I think my inspiration is found in today's day and age, social media, research, YouTube videos. So I think it's all over, but I think there's a lot of giants like yourself that do this work that inspire me, because I know that what you're saying has to be done.
I appreciate the compliment. What are you reading right now?
This is a good book, Search for Common Ground. Frederick Hess and Pedro Noguera, they're letters. They go back and forth on hot topics like equity, COVID-19, instructional, privatization. Really good book. They write letters back and forth to each other on hot topics.
Is that a new one?
Yeah. It's called The Search for Common Ground. It came out like last year. So.
Okay. Yeah. What book do you recommend for our viewers?
Well, there's a bunch of books. They're right here. You got to buy the Kafele pack. And I would tell people that, recognize that this is where the brother started, right here.
Yeah, 91.
A handbook for Black parents educating children. So I always tell people he started from there and he went down here. So this whole toolkit you got on your website is a great way to start.
I appreciate you. What do you want to accomplish that you haven't accomplished yet?
I would love to finish my doctorate. It's been a labor of love and a journey that's been interrupted by a variety of variables. And so my hope is that I'll become Dr. Soler next June.
I love it. Congrats on that. I know what's going to happen. Are you satisfied with where you are professionally?
No, because if I was, then I would have to be retired. So,
Yep, never satisfied. What could you say to a viewer out there who continues to face closed doors?
It's hard, and I know it sucks, but when the door opens, it'll make sense why those other ones were closed.
What could you say to a viewer out there who's lost their fire?
Take some time to kind of just insulate yourself with those you care and love with, recommit to the work and figure out your why, and then the how comes a little bit easier.
And lastly, if Anibal Soler Jr. was a word in a dictionary, what would be your definition?
Resilient and transformative.
Resilient and transformative. That takes us to the end, man. I want to thank you for this amazing conversation. Folks, you know how we do it, the veterans anyway, the new folks. If you enjoyed the discussion today, give us some fire emojis or some hearts or some praise or some whatever your favorite emoji is.
Just some bombs up in here, isn't there?
Oh yeah, some bomb. That's what Yolanda just put. Give us some bombs. Give us what you give us to let the guests know that you appreciate the knowledge. This is a professional learning platform. It's we don't get into the politics of education and all that. That's other people have those platforms. I'm trying to give folks, and by bringing great people like yourself on here, information that you could take back to school Monday or whenever schools reopen and take your game to another level. So I see all that fire, all them hearts, all them bombs coming, all them hundreds coming through. So that means the folks appreciate what you contributed to their lives, their professional lives today. So,
and Baruti, as you go forward, you got to say, give me some fuego. You know what I mean? That's Latino fire.
Fuego. Fuego. Give me some fuego. That fire. That's right. You're right. Hey, let me close us out. You got to run, or you got 2 minutes?
I'm good. Go ahead.
Let me close us out. Hey, folks, I appreciate you checking in as always. We're going into week 105 next week. My guest will be listen to this. A Chicago teacher who previously was a Chicago principal, and he was a principal at a high level, but decided to go back to the classroom. His name is LaRue Fitch. He's my guy. And he'll be my guest next week. He's got 2 books out. So if you Google him or go to Amazon, LaRue Fitch, you can get a head start. But again, a Chicago teacher who was a high-level principal, but decided my place is back in the classroom and left the principalship and went back. You don't see too many. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So join me next week at 10:55 Eastern Standard Time. On Saturday mornings, Facebook Live, Sean Hurt, 10 o'clock. Create and Educate with Dr. Sheikah Houston and soon to be Dr. Tammy Taylor, 10:30. Unlock the Middle with Josh Tovar and the crew at 7 on Sundays. And in Village Leadership Group with Dr. Roz Gaskins and Coach Williams, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6. Again, the Assistant Principal 50, the Aspiring Principal 50, and the Equity and Social Justice Education 50. Those are my 3 newest. But all my books, just go to Amazon and type in their search bar, Baruti Kafele, Baruti, and type that in and you'll see all of my books. I'm not phasing out my Facebook personal homepage for the platform on Saturdays. I'm gonna keep it there because I think I was confusing people. So we'll be on all 4 every Saturday. I might add it to Instagram at some point. We'll see. But we're here. Make sure you subscribe to the Virtual AP Leadership Academy Facebook page because I write a commentary exclusive to the Facebook page every Sunday morning before 10. So it'll be up tomorrow morning. And it's always rooted in this conversation on Saturday. So the Academy is 2 parts, Saturday and Sunday. Also, so like and follow that page, but also subscribe to the Virtual AP Leadership Academy YouTube channel. Someone asked, how can I keep in contact with him? Yeah. I forgot, Anibal. Folks want to know how to follow you and reach out to you. Give them that information.
Yeah, so I'm at Twitter, Anibal Soler, Jr. Anibal Soler Jr.
Just as it's spelled on the screen, folks.
Yeah, just like it's spelled all one word, though. And then Facebook as well, LinkedIn, So those of you want to network and again, do my best to play my part.
There it is. There it is. And then lastly, like I always say, your diet, be on top of it. Your exercise, be on top of it. I did 5 miles yesterday, man. I walked around this. I'm in Jersey City. I walked around this thing like I was losing my mind, man, because it matters. That's the work behind the scenes that nobody sees. So, get that exercise in, and then your COVID precautions. Folks want to act like we're post-pandemic. Let me tell you something. Let me grab this mask here. I ain't gonna put it on though, but when I get on these planes, I will be wearing the mask, right? So because somebody's sitting in the middle seat next to me, they're gonna cough, they're gonna sneeze, and I'm not gonna know what's triggering that. So I'm gonna be like, right? So I'm gonna protect myself. So I'm not gonna sit here and tell you, to vaccinate and all that kind of stuff. But I am gonna say take precaution. So that you extend your life as long as you can. So I'm not going to wear the mask everywhere I go. Don't get me wrong. But when I'm on that airplane, I will. Hey, folks, appreciate you being here. Looking forward to seeing you here next Saturday, 10:55. So have a great week. Have an extraordinary week. Have your best week yet. Peace. Peace. Thumbs up. Cock that fist back. 1, 2, 3. Bam! And if I don't do this one thing before y'all sign off, I forgot my bat, man. Anibal hit it out the park, y'all. I forgot that, right? He hit it out the park. Grand slam, right? So I had to get that in, or I'll be like feeling guilty for the rest of the day, right?
Roberto Clemente style, baby.
Yes, that's it. Roberto Clemente, number 21, Pittsburgh Pirates. Peace. Stay there.